Oh, because it's coming over on both channels.
Yeah,
Let me try that again, okay?
sure. Testing English 1, testing 1, 2. Testing English side, testing 1, 2. We are on English side, microphone 1. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing the English side. Testing English, continuously testing. It's a glorious fine morning here on this Wednesday. There's about temperatures of 15 degrees out there. If you're looking to commute in the morning, watch out. We got a bit of traffic on the 416 heading east towards Elgin Street. Continue to test. Going to tell you a little story about a sheepdog named Lassie on the East Prairies of Newfoundland and Labrador. Testing. Still testing. Don't have too much on Lassie for you there. Continuously talking. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. That's it. That's all I know of the alphabet. Got nothing else. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1. Testing 2. Testing 3. Still testing. Oh, I'm coming over. Okay. No. Oh, okay. Testing English side, mic 1. Test, good. Testing English, mic 2. Good. Testing English on mic 2. English on mic 2. Good. Testing English on mic 2. Testing English on mic 1. English on mic 1. Good.
that have the
Audio test.
have your... show up a little bit.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I could ask members of council to take their seats, we'll begin the meeting in 1 minute. On va commencer la réunion dans 1 minute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, et bienvenue dans le conseil municipal de la ville d'Ottawa pour le 14 juin 2010.
Welcome to the city's meeting.
15th of June 2017. For those who are able to, could you please rise for a moment of personal reflection and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem. If you could remain standing, we'll ask our colleague, Councillor Kakish, to introduce our very special guests who are going to sing our national anthem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today is the intermediate FX Factor who will perform the national anthem from St. Francis Xavier High School in Riverside South. St. Francis Xavier is the newest high school in the Ottawa Catholic School Board. With a population of around 2,000, they have quickly grown into one of the largest schools in the board. The glee club known as FX Factor forms each fall under the direction of Mr. McGuire. All are welcome to join and meet on Mondays and Wednesdays to practice. Music is learned by ear, and students develop their own choreography for performances. In May, FX Factor took home several awards at the annual Sing-Off competition at All Saints Catholic High School in Stittsville. Mr. McGuire and his talented high school partner, Miss Maureen Ahern, have worked to build a vibrant music program at St. Francis Xavier and are extremely proud of all their students who participate in the performing arts at the school. Mr. McGuire has been the intermediate music teacher at the school since it opened in 2009. He also directs the intermediate and senior glee clubs. This year is a special one for Mr. McGuire, as this is his last time directing and conducting the students at St. FX, as he is retiring after 32 years of teaching. All of the students here today are in grade 7 or grade 8. The version today of the National Anthem is adapted from the wonderful version developed and recorded for Canada's last big birthday, Canada 125, fitting as we get set to celebrate our 150th birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, FX Factor.
Well, what a beautiful rendition. Thank you very much, St. Francis Xavier students, and thank you, Councillor Kakish, for bringing these students to City Hall.
Let's go Penguins.
Well, it's an honor to invite another great group of singers, the Ottawa Police Chorus, to come and join me here in the circle. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to come up to the circle, and I'll invite Councillor El Shantiri, the Chair of the Police Board, and Councillor Catherine McKenney, where headquarters of Police Service is located in her ward, to come forward. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for this meeting's City Builder Award. No, we don't want Eli and Catherine to sing. No. No disrespect, but they're the pros. Also very pleased that Director General of the Ottawa Police Service, Deborah Fraser, is here. Chief Bordelot would very much like to be here. He's out of town on business. And we have Jeffrey Linkletter, Music Director. I know Barbara Duggan would be here, but she's not able to be here. Welcome, Deborah. And colleagues and family members of the choir are with us as well. I'm also pleased to inform you that members of the Ottawa Police Chorus will perform Go Now in Peace following the presentation. The Ottawa Police Chorus was created in 1972 and celebrates its 45th anniversary this year. 3 of the original tenors remain singing with the chorus: Wayne Barry, Paul Rochon, and is it Jean or Jean? Jean Roger. The mission of the Ottawa Police Chorus is to enhance the image of the Ottawa Police Service through song. To accomplish this goal, the chorus sings at a multiplicity of events, large and small, including cultural events, retirement homes, concerts, Christmas parties in the community. La mission du choir de police d'Ottawa est d'amener.
The mission of the Ottawa Police Chorus is to enhance the image of the Ottawa Police Service through song. To accomplish this goal, the chorus sings at a multiplicity of events, large and small,
Annually since 1978 at the Canadian National Police Memorial Service on Parliament Hill. They are privileged to stand with other police choruses from across Canada on the steps of Parliament Hill every September to honor the sacrifice of fallen officers at the National Police Monument. The chorus sings in 4-part harmony, singing a varied repertoire of classical, popular, and jazz, some challenging and all rewarding. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Ottawa Police Chorus for their many contributions to the community and the entire city.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Ottawa Police Chorus for their many contributions to the community and to the entire city.
The chorus perform at many different events. They always are. I'm impressed with how disciplined they are. I guess you have to be if you're a police chorus, but I'm very impressed with the great work that Barbara does, the manager of the choir, and I know Jeffrey Linkletter will say a few words before the performance. So I'm going to ask Heather to bring me the certificate, and we're going to present this to Jeffrey on behalf of the whole chorus. There's Jeffrey right over here. Catherine and Eli, come on in here, in the middle, right there.
Can we go behind the...
Yeah, there we go. There you go. Deborah, come on in here.
Can you cut out the jersey after picture, please?
Mayor Jim Watson, Councillor Eli Elson-Terry, Councillor Catherine McKinney, and Deborah Fraser. Members and special guests, it is a pleasure and an honor for me to accept this prestigious award on behalf of the Ottawa Police Chorus. I wish everybody here had been at our rehearsal when the announcement was made that the OPC had been selected as a recipient of the Mayor's City Builder Award. There was this spontaneous outburst of applause and cheering. In fact, Mayor Watson, you received a standing ovation. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful. Mayor Watson, I would like to take this moment to congratulate you and to thank you and the Council for creating this award. I know there are so many people and so many organizations in the City of Ottawa who deserve to be recipients of this award. Awards like this are so essential in today's society. We are constantly saturated with media reports about the acts of violence and hatred that occur every day around the world. And unfortunately, the far more numerous acts of kindness, of caring, and dedication are pushed into the background. I think we need even more awards like this to celebrate the ongoing and continuous efforts of the citizens of Ottawa who make this such a wonderful city to live in. I'd also like to interject here and say to Deborah Fraser, if you will pass this on, please, to the Ottawa Police Chorus. we receive such wonderful support and encouragement from the chief all the way down to the ranks of the Ottawa Police Service, and we do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Before I close, I would like to make this simple statement on behalf of the Ottawa Police Chorus. We would like to assure everyone present that the #1 priority for each member of the Ottawa Police Chorus is to reach out to the community with our music and to help make it a better community. The majority of our repertoire is selected because it has a message for everyone. We always strive to entertain and to send people home happy, but we also want to be sure that they leave feeling challenged to reach out to all those around them. Songs like The Sounds of Silence, that talks about listening to people and hearing what they have to say, or Bridge Over Troubled Waters, that says, when you're down and out, my friend, I will comfort you. Or my own personal favorite, He Ain't Heavy, He's my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, my friend, my neighbor. We would like to leave you with a song about peace, about faith, and about reaching out to others. It's called Go Now in Peace. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much for that beautiful rendition, and thank you for the great work you do in the community. For our next presentation, I'd like to invite Heather Murphy to come forward. Her ward councillor, Marianne Wilkinson, and Councillor Diane Deans, co-chair of the City of Ottawa's Roundtable on Seniors, to come forward and join me. I'd also recognize in the gallery we have Danielle MacDonald, CEO of Ottawa Public Library, Monique Deserlo, Deputy CEO, and representatives from the Friends of the Ottawa Public Library. And come on in here, Heather. You're the star of the show. Thank you. On behalf of the City of Ottawa and my council colleagues, it's my pleasure to recognize Heather with the Ontario Senior of the Year Award for the City of Ottawa. It's fitting that we present this award this month, as June is Seniors Month in Ontario. La remise de ce prix tombe à point puissant.
It is fitting that we present this award this month, as June is Senior Month in Ontario.
Marks the 33rd anniversary of Seniors Month in Ontario. This year's theme is Living Your Best Life. This year, we recognize Heather Murphy with the Senior of the Year Award in recognition of her outstanding contributions to her community. Cette année, nous remettons le prix.
This year, we recognize Heather Murphy with the Senior of the Year Award in recognition of her outstanding contributions to her community.
Senior of the Year Award gives each municipality, all 444 in Ontario, the opportunity to honor one outstanding local Ontarian who, after the age of 65, has enriched the social, cultural, or civic life of his or her community. Heather has served on the Friends of the Ottawa Public Library Association Board since 2007, joining FOPLA's local committee representative for Canada, the position she currently holds. She has also served as Vice President and Secretary at various times. Elle a aussi été
She has also served as Vice President and Secretary,
overseeing approximately 60 volunteers who work in FOPLA bookstores, book sales at the Beaverbrook, Hazeldean, and Carp branches. She is also the store manager at the Hazeldean branch and is on the coordination team of the Beaverbrook branch. Heather was part of the original management team that opened the first FOPLA store in Canada at the Hazeldean branch in the fall of 2007. She also oversaw the opening of the FOPLA bookstore at the new Beaverbrook branch, which opened in the fall of 2014. And since the creation of Heather's local committee in 2007, the book sales have reached $180,000. When Heather stepped up to an open call for community volunteers in 2007, there were no permanent FOPLA book sale locations in the West End. Heather took on the challenge of establishing the West End's first dedication sales space at the Hazeldean branch and has never looked back. Heather accepté le défi.
Heather took on the challenge of establishing the West End's first dedication sales space at the Hazeldean branch, and she's never looked back.
Between 2007 and 2014, Heather worked closely with Hazeldean branch staff and community volunteers through 3 different incarnations of the original Book Nook as space requirements at the branch changed and evolved. Without a doubt, Heather is passionate about supporting the library and has devoted countless hours to ensuring FOPLA's success in the city's West End. La passion de Heather pour le...
Heather is clearly passionate about the OPL.
On behalf of the province of Ontario, to present Heather with the Ontario Senior of the Year Award. Congratulations, félicitations, and thank you for the great work you do on behalf of our citizens. Come on over here, everyone.
Yes, I'm not quite as tall as you are, Mayor Watson. And as I told you earlier, I'm really sorry I did not wear my honored Ottawa Senator's jersey to the council meeting today. Okay, I'm not used to public speaking, so thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Dean, remainder of the councillors, and the rest of you here. I am incredibly honored and also very humbled to have been selected to receive this award from amongst all the wonderful seniors in Ottawa who volunteer their time, energy, and talents to make this a better community in which to live. In my case, as the Mayor said, I chose the Friends of the Ottawa Public Library Association, or FOPLA, or perhaps more accurately, it chose me. I have worked or volunteered in libraries since I was about 10 years old and very much believe that they provide a tremendous value to the community. So when I saw an article in the Canada Courier-Standard a few months after I retired that was looking for volunteers for the new self-serve bookstore in the Hazeldean branch, it seemed like a good fit for me. I applied and have been volunteering there ever since. I would like to thank the Ottawa Public Library for providing me with this opportunity. It has been very supportive of FOPLA's efforts throughout the years. The library's management team works with the FOPLA board to ensure that things run smoothly and that the funds raised by FOPLA are well spent. And the library staff has been a real pleasure to work with. They're always helpful and understanding of our intrusions into their space. I would also like to thank FOPLA. It has been a wonderful organization to volunteer for. Its mission is to support the Ottawa Public Library through fundraising, advocacy, and literacy activities. It raises funds by selling books donated by the community in most of the library's branches. When I started, I believe Hazeldean was the 8th or 9th branch to have a FOPLA bookstore. We now have FOPLA bookstores in 28 of the 33 branches. We have also more than doubled the amount that we were able to gift to the library each year. In 2016, the amount gifted was $350,000. The funds are used by the library to purchase items or support programs that it could not otherwise afford for each of its 33 branches. Each branch is usually able to purchase something with FOPLA funds every year. Larger amounts are given in special cases, such as renovations. In my particular case in the West End, Hazeldean received $30,000 for its renovations in 2012, and Beaverbrook received $100,000 when it was converted from a community to a district library in 2014. At the moment, FOPLA is working on its latest and largest ever project. We will be establishing a new bookstore in the new Central Library, which we hope will be a showpiece, along with the new Central Library itself. Finally, I would like to circle back to the many seniors who volunteer in many different ways in our community, in libraries, in hospitals, in seniors and youth organizations. The list goes on. To me, they are an invaluable resource for the community. I am glad that Ontario has set up this award program to recognize their service. I'm very honored and humbled to have been recognized in this way today. Thank you.
See you Wednesday morning.
Will do.
Well, thank you again, Heather. I'd like to invite City Manager Steve Kanellakis and John Moser, who recently retired General Manager of the City's Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department, as well as Jan Harder, Chair of Planning, and Tim Tierney, Vice Chair of Planning, to come forward. Welcome, John. Steve. What a guy, eh? It's a pleasure today to have the opportunity to recognize the many contributions of John Moser to the City of Ottawa throughout his distinguished career. J'ai le plaisir aujourd'hui de souligner.
It's a pleasure today to have the opportunity today to recognize the many contributions of John Moser to the City of Ottawa throughout his career.
City of Ottawa's Planning Department as the zoning manager in the last decade of the last century. He progressed through the organization with his last role before amalgamation being the Director of Planning. Il a fait son chemin dans l'organisation.
He progressed through the organization with his last role before amalgamation being the Director of Planning.
The City of Ottawa. John has also served as General Manager of Planning and Growth Management, and more recently, the Acting General Manager of Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. I understand that one of John's proudest accomplishments, and I mentioned this the other day in his career, was the role as chair of the 2001 Amalgamation Day 1 Readiness Committee, which ensured that all planning and building processes were business as usual on the opening day of the new city. And you can imagine taking regional bylaws and 10 municipalities all coming together to make sure we were ready in 2001. A more recent accomplishment was the approval by City Council in 2013 of the city's official plan, transportation, infrastructure, cycling plans, which will guide the city's growth into the future with an emphasis on affordability. Throughout his career, John's work demonstrated his belief in teamwork, creative problem-solving, setting goals, quality service, and being responsive to the public. These beliefs have served him well throughout his career, and he's provided truly outstanding service to the community. Ces valeurs l'ont accompagné tout.
These beliefs have served him well throughout his career, and he has provided truly outstanding service to our community.
30 years of public service at the municipal level, John is moving on to another stage of life, retirement. I want to take this opportunity to thank John for all of his exceptional work he has done for the city throughout his distinguished career. Je veux remercier John.
I'd like to thank John today for exceptional work that he's done throughout his career.
Retirement, and the photograph that we're going to present to you is one of John's favorite views of the city, the one he had from his office window, where every day he could see the Peace Tower and the flags flying on the plaza and be proud to be living and working in Ottawa. John, congratulations. Félicitations.
Thank you, Worship, councillors, chairs, vice chairs, senior leadership team, staff. I see there's some staff in the crowd, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Worship, for your kind words in recognizing my 27-year commitment to the City of Ottawa and to its residents. As I've said many times over my career, I consider myself a public servant, and I've taken pride in working with many mayors, many chairs, many councils, many of the senior leaders that I've worked with, the development community and the general public, really in assisting the evolution of our great city. And just so everybody knows that city building is a group effort, so I've certainly enjoyed my time working with a whole range of stakeholders in the city. I've always been taught by many city clerks over the years and others to be brief at council, and whenever possible to answer a question with yes or no. So following that fine tradition, I'll be proactive and answer some possible questions people may have. So yes, I have left the employ of the city. Yes, I will continue to be interested in the evolution of the city, albeit from a distance. Yes, I will return your calls if ever you need some help. And yes, I am grateful for all your support over the years. One lasts in our profession because people trust you. No, I will not be seen walking the second floor looking for votes. No, I will not be running for public office. And no, I will not send as many service requests to 311 than the mayor. So finally, Your Worship, I want to thank you, Council, Mr. Kanalakis, the senior leadership team members, and my staff for treating me with respect as I transitioned from the employ of the city. It allowed me to complete some important projects, allowed for an orderly transition from Mr. Willis, with whom you will be in good hands, and allowed me to retrain myself to be self-sufficient, and thereby preparing me for the next stage in my life and in my career. So thank you all very much. I will miss you all.
Well, thank you very, very much, John. Final presentation, I'd ask Michael Maidman from the Executive Director of the Ottawa Food Bank to come forward. Some of you have noticed, and I was booed as I came in here. I thank you for that. I'm wearing a Penguins jersey, and Michael, hello, how are you? wearing a Sens jersey, which I'd rather be wearing. So let's hear it for Michael and the food bank. So as you know, mayors have these cheesy bets with other mayors when teams get into the playoffs, and we're no exception. We had a bet with the mayor of Pittsburgh, and I've got to say it was an amazing series. The Sens did us proud. It was lots of ups and downs, that's for sure, during the games, but obviously the Pens went on to win the Stanley Cup, so we take a little bit of comfort that we're defeated by the best team in the NHL this season. And part of the bet was, of course, to wear the jersey to a council meeting, and the other part, from a philanthropic point of view, was the losing mayor would donate $10 a goal from the winning team. So the Pens scored 16 goals, and I'm very pleased to provide this beautiful novelty check, as well as the real check, from me personally, to the food bank for $160. We had a lot of fun with the bet, and the food bank, as we all know, does such incredible work. Alors, ça c'est une occasion pour...
So this is an opportunity for us to support the Ottawa Food Bank. They do such good work in the community.
Your good work and the continued good work the food bank does each and every day, helping some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Thank you. Here we go. That won't fit in the ATM.
I've never actually felt bad accepting a donation until this morning, so it feels wrong, but I'll accept it with thanks.
Thank you. I want to take a few moments this morning to update you on some of the ongoing work that is underway regarding drug overdose prevention in the City of Ottawa.
I would like to provide an update on the measures that are taken to prevent overdoses in Ottawa.
Dialogue between municipalities and the two other levels of government on how best to coordinate efforts that will lead to a reduction of overdose deaths across Canada, including our city. What is clear is that we will only start to see real change by working with our community partners on a nimble and responsive, multifaceted strategy. Cities are on the front lines of this public health crisis. We have to work together as a community to save lives. Ottawa Public Health can't do this on its own. We have learned from examples in British Columbia that the crisis requires new ways of thinking and a coordinated approach to combat its momentum and persistence. Despite efforts, this crisis is escalating. In the last few weeks and months, we have started to see a response by upper levels of government. Over the last year, I have received regular updates by staff on what we are doing in Ottawa, and I can tell you that staff is busy on the ground delivering services to those in need and their families. Efforts to date illustrate that any effective response will require strong partnerships across many sectors.
Our efforts demonstrate that an efficient response depends on concerted efforts with our partnerships in many areas.
Not only with each other and other levels of government, but also with our school boards, community health centers, parent groups, first responders, and of course hospitals, coroners, mental health professionals, housing and homelessness groups, and our public health agencies. I believe that our shared goal and focus on how best to make meaningful change on the ground will translate in a decrease in drug misuse and overdose in time. We have to be realistic. There are no overnight solutions to addiction. Nous devons être réalistes. Il n'y a pas
we have to be realistic, and we have to find solutions for these dependencies.
Limited to public education to keep people safe from risky opioids, action to stem the production and importation of street drugs, and better access to affordable housing, mental health support, and clear pathways out of poverty. In 2015, Ottawa Public Health strengthened our opioid community response network, which is called the Ottawa Overdose Prevention and Response Task Force. This task force was struck after a series of overdoses occurred during a summer festival and has been actively engaged with outreach and prevention ever since. Led by Ottawa Public Health, the task force also includes representatives from many community health agencies, social agencies, pharmacies, coroner's office, local hospitals, the police service, City of Ottawa departments, including fire and paramedic. The city-led community effort has already undertaken many activities and has done significant work, including improved reporting, outreach, education, and training, to name just a few. Earlier this year, the task force functioned well as an early warning system by alerting the public to a spike of life-threatening drug overdose-related emergency department visits and to the introduction of counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl in the area. We're also working with the Champlain Local Health Integration Network to identify service gaps and opportunities to adjust mental health and addiction services to better assist those who live with problematic substance use, as well as their parents, families, siblings, and friends. Over the last few days, the Champlain Local Health Integration Network has introduced a number of short-term opioid response strategies. It is my understanding that the province has recently increased funding to the Champlain LHIN to support these changes, 4 to 5 FTEs. Together with our community partners, we are moving to help address some of the most urgent service demands related to the opioids and heightened risk during the summer period. For example, Ottawa Public Health is working with security companies and festival organizers by providing them with valuable party-safe information to reduce harm to festival goers. Overdoses, whether from drugs, alcohol, or a combination of both, are preventable. If you're going out over the summer to festivals, be safe and be prepared. Ottawa Public Health has many resources available online to help you and your loved ones stay safe this summer. Si vous comptez faire la fête à des...
If you want to party at various festivals, be prepared.
The use of Public Health Ontario's new interactive opioid tool for information on trends in opioid use, as well as publishing our own monthly local surveillance data. We're also increasing naloxone access and training. We continue to reach out to local pharmacists to support the provision of naloxone in the community, creating a distribution list of providers and promoting availability to residents. In the last year, 160 pharmacies have collectively distributed more than 4,000 naloxone kits. We're facilitating training on how to respond to an overdose using naloxone for staff and volunteers at Ottawa's shelters, downtown bars, and festivals. We are purchasing naloxone and have provided training to all 45 fire stations in the City of Ottawa. In total, 600 urban firefighters and 165 volunteer firefighters have been trained to date. Yesterday, I was joined by Councillors Tierney and Deans, as well as Councillor Caudry and Councillor Hubley, to witness the completion of firefighter training in the use of naloxone at the training centre in Alta Vista. Similarly, we are preparing for Ottawa Police Service members to administer naloxone when needed. On Monday, the province announced funding for the distribution of almost 80,000 additional naloxone kits per year to frontline organizations across Ontario. Ottawa has also has a well-developed awareness and prevention information campaign focusing on both youth and adults. Last November, the Overdose Prevention and Response Task Force launched a collaborative public awareness campaign called StopOverdoseOttawa.ca. This online hub contains up-to-date information, Ottawa-specific, on opioids. Since its launch, this site has recorded over 25,000 visits. We're engaging with all 4 school boards, the Ottawa Police Service, Rideau Wood Addictions and Family Services, and Maison Fraternité, as well as student leaders to develop a youth-to-youth approach to better engage our youth. Public health nurses, in collaboration with our partners, have increased the number of age-appropriate presentations to grade 4 to grade 12 students, and since the beginning of the year, we have reached close to 6,000 students. Additionally, we have offered more than 50 community information sessions for youth, parents, and teachers, and offered 4 Facebook Live sessions, which drew more than 20,000 viewers. We have launched a web series in both French and English called Opioids 101 that can be found at parentinginottawa.ca. That really just skims the surface of the work that is going on. Existing harm reduction services have also bolstered their capacity to help people who regularly use substances who are at the greatest risk of overdose. And we will be doing even more in the coming days as the province recently announced new base funding of $350,000 for the Ottawa Public Health Unit to directly support our local substance abuse misuse strategy. This will help us coordinate enhanced community-wide support. Ottawa has a plan with clear priorities, and we are ready to turn this funding into support on the ground for residents and families and for people with chronic dependence to illicit substances. This funding will not only help with the purchase of overdose prevention supplies to frontline agencies, it will also help to get more people who with lived experiences working one-on-one with individuals towards prevention and treatment. We realize the reality and gravity of this situation because the availability of more potent drugs and drugs laced with fentanyl is in fact increasing, and the instances of use and overdose are increasing. With some other public health issues, such as infectious disease outbreaks or the flu season, we typically start to see a start and an end. With overdoses relating to opioids, sadly, this is our new normal, and we need to adjust how we do things in order to deal with this ongoing crisis in our cities. I'm proud to say that Ottawa Public Health, first responders, and our community partners have stepped up with enhanced operations and unprecedented levels of engagement to meet this growing problem. That being said, ongoing federal and provincial support continues to be badly needed so that we can sustain the continuum of actions needed to manage this ongoing issue. In March, I spoke directly to Premier Wynne about Ottawa's need for immediate funding, and just last week we started to see the first installment of that commitment. I'm actively engaged on these issues on Council's behalf with Canada's Big City Mayors Caucus through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. At the beginning of June, BCMC presented a list of concrete recommendations to the Government of Canada to help ensure that any opioid funding meets the immediate needs of cities and our frontline workers. Earlier this week, I also participated in the discussion with Ontario's big city mayors on this issue. This was a constructive dialogue in which innovative local solutions from different municipalities were shared. This is a big issue to tackle, and it spans many different demographics. Another success story I wanted to highlight today, and I did on Monday with the Minister of Health and the Minister of Community Safety, which focuses on is Project STEP, which focuses on the needs of youth and their parents. STEP is a partnership among Ottawa Public Health, the 4 school boards, Maison Fraternité, Rita Wood Addiction and Family Services, the Champagne Lynn, Substance Abuse and Youth in Schools Coalition, the Ottawa Network for Education, and the United Way Centraide Ottawa. In 2015-2016, about 4,000 high school students, 8,200 grade 7 and 8 students, and 3,000 parents attended education and prevention classes. The same year, more than 1,400 students received counseling services from the school-based program, and over 200 parents engaged in counseling services. While STEP has been a wonderful partner in helping us reach youth and their parents, additional services and resources are required where there is a demonstrated need, specifically for services for people with chronic dependence on illicit substances. Lately, a lot of focus and support has been focused on youth and their parents, but we also know we need to offer supports to other vulnerable populations, including people in shelters and people with mental illness and drug addictions. I firmly believe we need a holistic approach to tackle this crisis from the variety of angles and with many partners in order to reach all our vulnerable populations and to meet people where they are in their journey. This includes early supports for parents raising young children, mental health and resources to promote resiliency, equipment and training for first responders and frontline service providers, treatment options for those who seek them, harm reduction services for those who need them, safe and adequate housing for those who are struggling. As you can see from my comments today, Ottawa's response to this crisis has to date involved extraordinary efforts from various city services and a number of community partners. I want to thank the Province of Ontario for their efforts to address the opioid crisis, particularly the Ontario strategy to prevent opioid addiction and overdose. Je veux remercier la province pour son...
I'd like to thank the province for their involvement and their efforts facing this crisis.
I believe we can make a significant difference. All three levels of government need to continue to coordinate the response so that funds are actually removing barriers to people getting help on the ground. That's why I'm grateful to many councillors who have been active in their communities by hosting training and information sessions and by helping parents and families navigate the treatment options available across the community. I'd also like to thank sincerely Councillor Shad Qadri, Chair of the Public Health, who's taken a leadership role on this file and the good work that you and Dr. Levy have done. Councillor Deans, Chair of the Community and Protective Services Committee. Dr. Ezra Levy, who accompanied me to Toronto with the other mayors, our Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Vera Etches, Deputy Medical Officer of Health, Andrew Hendricks, Manager of Clinical Programs, all of the nurses and staff at the Ottawa Public Health, and of course our community partners for their tireless work to date and their ongoing leadership. In particular, Canada councillors Alan Hubley and Marianne Wilkinson have also been in constant contact with families in their communities that have seen unthinkable heartbreak this past winter. I'd like to thank all councillors for your efforts to date. I wish I could say that that the job is done. Unfortunately, with substance misuse, we have learned that ongoing and sustained efforts will be required. Towards that end, city staff will be stepping up their efforts to coordinate communication efforts in the coming weeks through a public information campaign. There will be a push to promote and inform residents and visitors about how to access help from community service providers, reminders to stay safe while celebrating, and to support residents who are seeking resources for themselves or for their loved ones. Thank you for this opportunity to brief you on this important work underway across our city. Je vous remercie pour cette occasion.
Thank you for this opportunity to update you on this work.
Roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Conseiller Monette.
Present.
Councillor Middick.
Here.
Councillor Harder.
Here.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Present.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Qadri.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Here.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Conseiller Fleury.
Si.
Councillor Nussbaum.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Chernyshenko. Conseiller Cloutier.
Présent.
Conseiller Blais.
Present.
Councillor DeRose.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Kakish.
Present.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
Ici.
Le quorum est atteint, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbaux pour le 24 mai 2017. Carried. Declaration of interest, including those originally arising from prior meetings. Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Councillor Keith Eglai, declare a potential deemed indirect pecuniary interest on item 1 of City Council Agenda 52, Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, OCHC, annual report and annual general meeting of the shareholders, as my son has a summer job with OCHC.
Communications and petitions as presented. Councillor Brockington, do you have an item that you'd like to lift onto the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to lift the staff reply about my inquiry last week, potholes, road quality. I just have some follow-up.
So you need 3/4 to bring this on the agenda. Agreed? It's on a follow-up to his inquiry on potholes. Have you follow up with staff on the reply as the first step, which would normally...
I can, but since I raised it at our last council meeting and it's on the council's agenda, I thought I would raise follow-up questions and suggested actually go to Transportation Committee. But I wanted to raise at council what my ongoing issues are.
People agree they want this item on the agenda? If you don't, yeas and nays. Carried? Okay. All right. Regrets, Councillor David Chernyshenko regrets that he will be absent from the City Council meeting of June 14th. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation des rapports. Councillor Kadri and Hubley, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And the report seconded by Councillor Hubley, that the report from Ottawa Community Housing Corporation entitled Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, OCHC, Annual Report and Annual General Meeting of the Shareholders, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 25, Audit Committee Report number 11, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 25, Planning Committee Report 45, Transit Commission Report 13, and the Transportation Committee Report 24 be received and considered, and that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider Planning Committee Report 46 in order to provide a timely resolution to a potential applicant and mitigate risk of delay to critical project timelines, and that the petition listed under communications respecting road access from a proposed subdivision to Nature Trails Crescent and Paget Road be received.
Carried. Ottawa Community Housing Corporation, Société de Logement Communautaire d'Ottawa. Councillor Fleury will present as chair of the board. And Councillor Aguilar has left his seat.
Alors, bonjour, il me fait plaisir d'être parmi vous.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here this morning for the official presentation of the Ottawa Community Housing Corporation.
We have a few in attendance. We have our members of council that are here, obviously, Councillor McKinney, Councillor Middick, and Councillor Taylor. We're also joined by other board members that are in the audience and committee members, more specifically Kathy Jordan. I'd like to thank specifically Mayor Jim Watson, as well as members of council and City of Ottawa staff and our tenants, as well as our board of directors and committee members for all of the great work supporting Ottawa Community Housing. I'd like also to mention all the over 1,000 volunteers who have helped continue to support our various initiatives in the portfolio. This year, management has advanced important initiatives such as the portfolio management framework, and also as a focus on our responsiveness to tenants. I'd like to highlight a few key initiatives in the portfolio management framework. Obviously, some of you would know, especially those who are involved in community housing, that the portfolio management framework is a document by which we are dynamic, by which we are looking for acquisition, for sale, for redevelopment, and for various partnerships. We've recently announced an acquisition, which was the 933 Gladstone. We've also hosted a series of meetings with the private sector to discuss opportunities to partner with us and for us to partner with them. And that's been well received across our city. Specifically in terms of our tenant experience, a couple of initiatives you should be aware of. Obviously, our focus in elevators, we have one of the biggest portfolio of elevators of any corporation in our city. Making our leases a lot more friendlier for tenants who might have language barriers, so using images. The smoke-free unit, which continues to be one of our prime success. The one number as a corporation, and again, elevating standards in terms of cleanliness, maintenance, and general standards for repairs in a corporation. So
the various ways for the corporation to improve the quality of life for residents in the community. It innovated and showed great leadership in the public sector and affordable housing sector in the city.
It is also very well positioned in the sector. We're uniquely positioned. We're ready to renew the portfolio and to capitalize on new development opportunities that come to our city. I'd now like to share the floor with Stéphane Giguère, our CEO, to say a few highlights of the 2016 annual report.
Merci, Conseiller Fleury. Très apprécié, Your Worship, Council members. Thank you for having us here today. 2016 has been a year of continued focus on our commitment towards our values of care, which are collaboration, accountability, respect, and excellence. And aujourd'hui également, on a l'équipe.
And today we have the executive team with us that I have the privilege of managing, composed of professionals with great expertise. Their experience is recognized in the social housing area, but also in the private sector. I'm pleased to inform you that we remain in line with our strategic plan and with the 4 main objectives that are the focus of management.
To find innovative solutions to social housing challenges in Ottawa. As the social housing stock continues to age, our ongoing investment is a necessity. It's very important for us. OCH is being strategic in its decisions and activities to maximize the use of OCH's physical and financial resources. In 2016, OCH has invested a little over $30 million in the upkeep of existing buildings. 3 development projects for the construction of 64 homes have generated significant interest across Ottawa. The completion of Michel Heights expansions, 6 homes. As well, we are in planning and pre-construction phases for Ash Grove Community, 16 homes, but as well the Carrington Community Health Hub, 42 homes. OCH continues to build better homes, better communities with environmentally sustainable designs. OCH reaffirmed its commitment to green strategies with its new Eco2 plan, which sets important goals and focus on sustainable management of the buildings. Le plan Eco2 nous guide dans la réalisation de projets.
Our plan will guide us in the production of large projects.
OCH continues to collaborate with private sector, and as well to so many groups and agencies in Ottawa that they are helping us to build safe, healthy, and very inclusive communities to our tenants. It's very important to us. This enables positive social environments and delivers better support to the tenants. En tant que deuxième, plus important.
As the second most important social housing supplier in Ontario, our corporation is recognized as a leader in the housing area at the national level and international level.
OCH continues to enhance the tenant experience. Councillor Fleury mentioned in response to a tenant satisfaction survey, the result has demonstrated that it's very important for us to continue to improve the tenant experience by looking at the cleaning services standards, the communication with the tenants, and maintenance delivery services on a daily basis. In our new integrity policy, it allows us to remain accountable and transparent in our operations as well. OCH managed within its operating budget. We received $3.9 million of utility rebates and generated a surplus of $437,000 as a result of operational efficiencies. We are grateful to our shareholder, City Council, and the City of Ottawa staff for being such engaged partners. Your ongoing guidance and support through incentives such as the investment in affordable housing allow us to make a tremendous difference in our ability to build homes and invest in our buildings, which house more than 32,000 people, residents of Ottawa. On behalf of staff, partners, and our tenants, thank you very much. We're really proud, and merci beaucoup de votre appui et de votre...
Thank you so much for your support and your trust.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions pour...
Are there any questions for community housing and the CEO? Thank you.
As presented, carried. And thank you, Stéphane and Mathieu, for the good work.
Thank you.
You and your staff do. Committee reports, rapport des comités Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee, rapport numéro 25 de l'agriculture et des affaires rurales. Item number 2, Manotick Mahogany Harbor Dock Project. Carried. Audit Committee Report number 11, rapport numéro 11 du Comité de vérification, item 3, 2016 City of Ottawa Consolidated Financial Statements. Carried. Item number 4, Office of the Auditor General Report on Audit Follow-ups and Detailed Audit Follow-up Reports. Received. FEDCO, item number 5, Rapport sur les services en français 2016, Report on French Language Services. Received. Item 6, Comprehensive Asset Management Program Update, mise à jour sur le programme de gestion intégrale des actifs. Carried. Item number 7, Long Range Financial Plan 5, Tax Supported Capital Plan Financier à long terme, numéro 5. Hold. Item number 8, Proposed 2018 Budget Timeline and Consultation Process. Carried. Item 9, Information Technology Services Resource Alignment. Carried. Item 10, Economic Development Strategy Implementation Update and 2017 Implementation Plan. Carried. Or received and carried. Planning Report number 45, Rapport numéro 45 du Comité de l'Urbanisme, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 190 Richmond Road, Modification Règlement de Zonage 190 Rue Richmond. Carried. Item 12, 250 Vanguard, request to be treated as a minor zoning bylaw amendment, 250 Promenade Vanguard. Carried. Transit Commission Report number 13, rapport numéro 13 de la Commission du Transport en Commun, OC Transpo Equifair, Equitarif d'OC Transpo. Carried. Transportation Committee Report number 24, rapport numéro 24 du Comité de Transport, Transportation Impact Assessment Guidelines, update, mise à jour des lignes directrices relatives aux évaluations de répercussions sur les transports. Carried. Item number 15, Barhaven and Maryville Road Rail Grade Separation Study and Barhaven Rail Safety Program. Carried. Hold. Is it a quick question, Councillor, or more detailed? You want to do it now, then?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just on this item, when reading through the report, I didn't see any mention of the anticipated range of cost for the environmental assessment, which we're asking staff to put in to the budget for 2018.
I'll just ask Ms. Chi to come down and respond to that.
If we can have Ms. Cheese, there we go.
Mr. Mayor, this is going to be a competitive process, but if we group them together, it's going to be several millions of dollars in the range of $3.5 in that range. You'll see the numbers when we prepare the budget for the fall. It's just that it's going to be a competitive process.
Okay, great. And the second question was, I see that the recommendation advises that we seek funding from Via Rail and the feds in the province for the design and the construction phase, but is there a reason why we're not asking for cost sharing for the environmental assessment?
We could pursue that, but the intention is that we could fund this through our annual environmental assessment budget and get moving with the file.
Would there be any downside to asking for cost sharing? I'm just thinking Via Rail's being an important partner throughout this and has paid for the feasibility study and will be expected to pay for the capital costs. I'm thinking of the King Edward Truck Tunnel, where we're seeking cost sharing for the environmental assessment from both the feds and the province. In this case, obviously the feds have the more important nexus, but would it be a fair request to see if we cannot also get cost sharing for the environmental assessment portion?
Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do that. Our issue here is we need to move on this, and so we wanted to put the request forward for the budget process, and we can certainly put that in our discussions to see if VIA wants to do that. They did fund the current study, but we'll certainly include that in the request. But our recommendation to you is that we move forward and get progress on this in the interest of the safety that we need down there.
Great, that's great. I mean, we won't know for another 6 months whether council passes the amount, so there is time to seek that funding. So I appreciate the willingness to do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On the report, carried. Item number 16, update to the review of winter operations on roadways report. Received. Item 17, River Road speed reduction from Lowen Drive to 110 meters south of Tuesley Drive. Hold. Do you have a quick question, or is there... Okay. Item 18, all-way stop control at the intersection of Southmore Drive East and Thorndale Drive, and speed reductions on Plant and Southmore Drives. Carried. Item 19, all-way stop control at the intersection of Prestone Drive and DV Way. Carried. Item number 20, Garden Way Drive sidewalk scope reduction. Carried. Item 21, request to extend hours for 283 Elgin Street and for all right-of-way patios for Canada Day 2017 celebrations. Demande de prorogation des heures d'ouverture pour le 283 rue Elgin et pour toutes les terrasses sur l'emprise à l'occasion de la Fête du Canada. Hold. Item 22, right-of-way patio bylaw insurance requirements for cafe seating patios. Carried. Item 23, Jean d'Arc Boulevard sidewalk from Champlain Street to 10th Line Road, removal from the Ottawa pedestrian plan. Carried. Bulk consent agenda, Councillor Hubley would like to remove item number L. Does anyone else wish to remove anything from bulk consent agenda? On the bulk consent agenda is presented. Carried. With the exception of L. That's correct. All right. Councillor Brockington's item is the first held item with respect to road quality. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning. Just 90 seconds. Thank you to Council for allowing me to just follow up. Three things I want to follow up on, and I'd like to suggest that maybe a brief report go to Transportation Committee just to vet this more and not have it at Council. But I was at my Councillor inquiry that I filed at our last meeting, I talked about, the part 2 was about performance audits. And in the staff reply, it only talks about a pavement performance data study. I'm looking for more information, not only about what that study is, but more details about how city staff inspect and provide oversight to these jobs that are occurring in the city. I do believe that in addition to the weather conditions that we've had, that there are other issues at play that contribute to the deterioration of our roads, and I'd like staff to go into detail exactly how city staff are providing that oversight. And the other part, Mr. Mayor, that I wanted to follow up today is I am seeking more information. In the report, it talks about testing different asphalt products, the tests that are going on in the city, and there's reference to research that has been done at Queen's University that aligns with the MTO, and I'm looking for more information about how new testing in Ottawa with asphalt specs is going, and I'm looking for the details of that work. So rather than have that conversation at Council, I'm wondering if a staff report can be prepared and presented at the September Transportation Committee. That's it.
Well, I think really we'll ask the Chair of Transportation. He'll take that under advisement. He has a busy work plan ahead.
Resources. Much of this was covered at committee, especially around the asphalt testing. There was a very detailed answer provided at committee in that regard. So I think we'll take it under advisement, but I think maybe simply a meeting between yourself, Councillor Brockington, perhaps Kevin Wiley or a member of his team would be able to fill in some of the blanks. But we did have an extensive discussion about this at committee.
At this month?
Sorry?
Which committee meeting are you referring to?
At Transportation Committee.
Okay. I did not see that discussion. I was at that meeting and we did not have that discussion.
It was at FEDCO.
Sorry? Yes, sorry, at FEDCO, yes. Sorry, yes. Not, yeah, at FEDCO.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I mean, I've asked some questions. I'd like some more information. If staff just want to reply to me, that's fine. But I do think there's some benefit to having it go through the committee where this subject matter is aired out. If the chair doesn't want to have that discussion, that's okay.
I don't think he's saying that, Councillor. It did come up. There was an item on at FEDCO. We talked about the Queen's, all the things that you raise. I would suggest perhaps go back and go to the archives and listen to the committee discussion. If your answers aren't satisfactory, then go back to Mr. Wiley.
If the answers exist, I'm just surprised the staff reply that I received was so light in details. I specifically asked questions our last meeting, and the answers are not reflected in the staff document. That's why I'm followed up today.
Again, Mr. Mayor, if I can respond, I'm not suggesting in any way, Councillor Brockington, that the answers shouldn't be provided. What I'm suggesting is there was a very robust discussion about this when the report was tabled at committee, and especially in and around things like the asphalt testing, there was good dialogue with staff about that. So all I was suggesting was staff could meet with you. If you're still not satisfied at that point, we can look at whether there's room in the work plan to move forward with that. I'm just trying to avoid duplication of resources since the work's already been put in.
Okay. The next item held, item number 7, Long-Range Financial Plan 5, Tax Supported Capital Financing. Councillor Chiarelli had a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back in 2012, when we began looking at the gap between what we were contributing to life cycle and renewal of capital resources and what we needed to do, we had identified a specific dollar amount in terms of a gap in 2012. What was that amount?
The gap back in 2012, I believe, was $70 million in 2012 dollars.
Okay. And the gap today is $70 million, but in 2017 dollars. Is that right?
If just a second, I'll get Ms. Jasmine down here.
Just questioning the progress.
It was actually $85 million if you included all tax assets, and in 2017 dollars it's $95 million, the 2012 gap, and now it's $70 million. So we've dropped it by $20 million.
Okay. And what have been the consequences of not filling in the gap are, as we've been told many times, you tend to shorten the lifespan of some assets and require complete reconstruction and that kind of thing. What's the dollar value of those exercises? Consequences of not filling the gap.
I would have to refer that to Alain Gontier. We actually they give us a number as to what do we need to, what kind of funds we need to keep the assets in a good state of repair. So if they are seeing an acceleration of costs, that I'm afraid that's something that they would have to reply to.
Okay, well, if he doesn't have it now, do you have it now?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the funding level that we've identified in a comprehensive asset management report and the long-range financial plan is basically to be able to maintain our assets in a state of good repair. We also have a strategy that provides predictable and stable funding to get us to that level. So basically, what we are putting in place are strategies to make sure that basically we make the best use of the funds that are available.
Okay, but if we're not providing enough to meet that, then presumably the consequences you alerted us to every single year for the last 15 years must have actually happened. So what is the dollar value of the reconstructions that had to be done as opposed to simple maintenance that could have been done if we were filling that gap?
So, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a specific number with me on that. What we do...
Can you give it to me later, though?
We can certainly look at, I think it's a number that's difficult to quantify. What we do is basically when we apply the investments based on a risk-based approach in terms of risk assets that pose the highest risk to service, and that's where we direct the funding. So we have assets that may see greater deterioration, but they're also as a lower risk to service. So we can allow them to run to failure, and that is part of an effective asset management strategy.
Okay, now it looks like virtually all of the difference between the gap that we had in 2012 and the gap we have now has been filled by moving $15 million from strategic initiatives into the gap. So I'm wondering, what is the buildup of new demands from the public anyway, or from ward-based areas for strategic initiatives that we're not meeting now?
So council had approved that, and the strategic initiatives were actually set at the beginning of this term, so there's no build-up of requests for strategic initiatives. What you had approved is what we're doing. So.
Okay, now we're also talking about, in this report, about addressing the gap problem partially by rationalizing our use of existing assets so that we shrink the need for renewal. What does that mean? What are some examples, or potential examples, even if you haven't identified any real examples?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that, it sounds more sinister than what it is. It's, for instance, we're doing a review of our arenas right now, which has been directed by committee and council, which Mr. Cheney is doing, where we have, when you think about, 40, 50 years ago, when people put thought into, how to create and develop city facilities, the world has changed. So single-pad arenas right now are not the most economically feasible way to deliver ice time. We've seen that by what the Sensplex is, where we now know that optimum ice pads are 4 ice pads in an arena to maximize energy and costs, booking, and the user experience. So we're looking at all our single-pad arenas. We're looking at how do you optimize the use of ice time across that. We have we have several facilities that were built in a day when they're small, they're not very well utilized. We could be consolidating some of the uses of those in our larger centers. So that study and that review on all our physical assets is going to be looked at over the next couple of years. We're hoping to be back early in the next term of council with recommendations to council on how we can minimize our footprint, yet still maintain service levels.
Okay, I think double pad arenas were always cheaper. I don't know why we ever went to the single pad. But anyway, but there are going to be other, you can confirm though, there's going to be other assets, not just arenas, that we'll be looking at doing this.
Well, that's exactly it. We're going to look at our whole asset base for where we can find efficiencies, because right now there's a sense, a strong sense, but also research backs it up that we're continuing to maintain facilities that are eating into our ability to maintain higher priority areas, and if we eliminated those, we'd have more funds available to deal with the higher priorities.
Okay, but how much of that is operational as opposed to capital?
Well, it's going to be a combination of both, because you might have an opportunity to actually sell some of those properties and reinvest that back into one-time capital, and you'll reduce your operating costs.
But the gap's annual. So what do you expect we're going to be able to fill in terms of the gap by, say, 2 years from now?
We don't know that yet. The strategy that was put forward in this plan identifies one strategy that isn't weighted at the same level as the other recommendations in the plan. It's one thing to look at that's going to generate some opportunity, some room, but it's not the solution to closing our funding gap. I don't know what that gap will be yet until we do the full study, and multiple departments, pretty well most of the general managers will be involved in that discussion with their teams.
Okay, and to Ms. Similik, we talk about renewing existing debt as part of the strategy, but remaining within the 7.5% tax impact ceiling. So how much more debt do you predict can be fit within the existing 7.5%?
Within the 7.5%, we're probably at least a couple $2 billion. But council had already approved that we stop using debt for renewal purposes, and that we use debt basically for the large growth projects that you have coming forward, including your investment in transit. So,
but you're going to renew debt as it retires, right?
We replace debt as it retires. So when it retires, so basically $40 million a year drops off, debt retires, and we go out and replace it. So we just We consider that basically circular debt.
But do you replace it with 40 million or 41 million if that fits within the 7.5%?
The deciding factor us isn't really the 7.5, it's what's the debt servicing, because we don't change your debt servicing. Okay. So if you were servicing $1 million of debt with $100,000, and now you can get $1.5 million of debt with that same $100,000, that's what we would be renewing it for.
Right. So the question was, what is the additional amount that you think you're projecting you could get within that ceiling?
There probably is at least, now if you listen to the forecasts today, they're talking about interest rate going up, so that room will be eaten away. But right now, we can at least do a couple of $1 million extra a year within the same debt servicing that when the debt retires.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nussbaum, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. First, following up from Councillor Chiarelli's question about the anticipated costs or additional cost of deferring maintenance. I think the important calculation to understand is what the difference in cost to the city would be if we managed to solve our deficit immediately. So if, let's say, in 2018, we were able to meet all of our capital asset replacement needs for the next 10 years, say until 2028, versus a situation where we're not. And I think understanding that delta would be useful, because when you look at the deterioration curve in the plan and you see that steep portion between good and fair, when if you do leave an asset without maintenance or replacement, you're going to essentially punt off additional cost. And so what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, given that the recommendation is to wait 10 years before fixing the deficit, what is that going to mean in potential increased costs to both the taxpayer of today and of a decade from now? So that's just a little precision question on Councillor Chiarelli's. I think it's the same ask, but I just wanted to make sure that Mr. Gontier understood what I was looking for in terms of that answer. My second question to Ms. Similek is, the staff recommendation is to wait 10 years before filling that gap. I'm just curious how staff arrived at that. Why not fill it sooner?
First of all, for 2018, you've already set your budget direction for 2018, so that was the limitation on that. What we're recommending is, we think, is a very doable plan. If there is additional money that comes in from the federal and provincial government, that will accelerate you and get you to your goal quicker, but we wouldn't recommend changing the city contribution, the increased city contribution in that time period. We still had 5 years on the existing plan, so recognizing that we are not getting permanent funds from the federal and provincial governments at this point in time for renewal works, we just extended it out for another 5 years past that.
But we don't know what the financial implication, it sounds like, of waiting 10 years to fill that gap versus filling it now, correct?
We didn't see, even though, and I guess I would point you to this, if you look at your assets, how they rate, and from 2012 to 2017, in that 5-year period, you didn't fill your gap. You still had another 5 years to go, and you didn't see a huge deterioration in the state of the assets. So what the engineering group does is, with the funds that they receive, they allocate it to their highest priority, so that we are actually able to maintain the assets in more or less the same state of repair as they were before. We're not able to move it forward, and that's the objective of the next 10 years, is to actually gain ground and move it forward in terms of its overall state of repair.
I was surprised to see in the chart on page 9 of the report an anticipation that the renewal funding will stay static during that 10-year period at roughly I guess, $195 million by 2027. In a city where we are growing the number of assets and where costs for these types of things usually go up, can you just explain how it is that we're anticipating that in 10 years' time we will have no greater need for renewal funding for these assets?
We're not actually saying that, Councillor. What we're saying is that when we look at the assets and what we have today, we need $195 million. This report comes back to you every basically 5 years. So you'll be able to see when we update it again the next time whether there actually has been a change in the requirement, whether it has grown, whether it has shrunk as a result of other non-financial decisions that are made. But the asset base grows every year, but when you look at the asset base that grows, that's not the stuff that needs renewal right off the bat. The stuff that when you take over a new road, it's 15 years before you actually have to invest in that road again. So adding to your asset base doesn't automatically mean you have to spend more in the next year in order to maintain it in a good state of repair.
Just so I understand the first part of your answer, so what degree of confidence do you have that in 2027 we will require $195 million to support asset renewal? Is that is that just a guess, or is that a reasonably confident number?
That's a confident number. That's a number that's provided to me by engineering services as what they need today. That number will grow with inflation, definitely, but no, I'm fairly confident in that number.
So if that number grows, the strategy that's recommended in this report is to get us to $195 million in terms of additional financial wherewithal. Is there not a risk that if we're only aiming for 195 at this stage, but there's the potential for that number to grow by 2027, that we're not going to be in a deficit situation at that stage?
As I said in my previous response, you have this report in front of you every 5 years. You'll be able to do a course correction if, in fact, in the next 5 years, the number moves higher than $195 million.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the examples that you used in the report was contrasting us against the city of Mississauga, but it was, as you recall, an old example. So I asked staff to provide me with more current information on what their 2% infrastructure levy had gone toward, and sort of contrasting them against the city of Ottawa. And I found it really fascinating because their measure of assets against ours is very different. What they work toward is asset replacement value, which is a much higher test than a state of good repair. And also 1% of their infrastructure levy goes into a pay-as-you-go fund, so they will always have funds available for renewal. So they obviously are in a much healthier state than we are, but it got me to thinking about this state of good repair, because a lot of the information that was provided to us had a lot of our assets that were in a state less than good repair. So how do we determine good repair? Is that an average across the board, or is it every asset would be in good repair?
So, Mr. Mayor, I can respond to that question. When we're looking at state of good repair, it doesn't mean that all of the assets are in good condition in terms of the rating scale. It basically means that the assets are suitable for the service that they're intended to provide. So you could have a road that's in fair condition, but it's still suitable for the type of traffic that it's conveying and performing its function, so that it would still be a road that it's in the state of good repair.
So they're just like barely in good repair on a lot of things. Some are in poor repair, and that's
services that they're supporting. So as long as they're able to support
repair now and they need to be entirely rebuilt. So is that a probability that instead of rebuilding them that we would say, well, they're beyond repair, so we're just going to get out of that business?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's premature to, like, we're just doing the arenas now. It's an extensive process. The demographics and the usage of our parks and our sports fields and the amenities that people have changes over time as our community changes. I mean, you know, back when I was growing up, having field hockey pitches and other things like that weren't a very popular thing. We evolve with our community, and sometimes there's better uses for the community from what is being used. But again, that's looked at in the context of the broader scheme in terms of maintaining our service levels first, not trying to decrease our service levels. And as the Treasurer and our GM pointed out, we haven't even built into our forecast any significant savings or any savings from the rationalization. We just believe that the rationalization is something that's the responsible thing to do, so we're not carrying a bunch of dogs when we should be looking at them and have an opportunity to actually save taxpayers some money, yet maintain our service levels.
Thank you.
Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On in the report for the long-range financial plan, when you identify $4.5 million on a yearly basis, this is under your funding strategies, from within Council's tax target, continue to be added. That is within our 2% tax target. Is that correct?
It has been every year in this term.
Yes. And then the fourth bullet, you have $2.3 million per year added to the continuing $4.5 million increase from within Council's tax target beginning in 2019. So does that preclude the possibility of infrastructure levy?
In 2019, no.
So that tax target could include an additional infrastructure levy.
Council is free to determine whatever they want for a tax target for the next term.
And the added together the $6.8 million, or I guess what we're being asked to look at here in $7.8 million per year starting in the 2019 budget for 9 years. $7.8 million, what does that mean in terms of percentage of a tax increase? About.
I'm sorry, could you repeat as a percentage of?
Like a 1% tax increase, what does that give us? And what does 7.8% represent?
A 1% is roughly 14 million, so this is about a 0.5% tax increase.
So when we, just going back to the asset rationalization, when we look at our needs, I guess, you know, think about parks, for example. We know that the need is 12 million and there's no funding available for that. So am I right to assume that that's how much we will need to achieve through either asset rationalization or a levy, or it will just be taken from the existing tax target?
So the need of the 12 million for parks will be gradually filled in. It's every year the allocation goes up and the engineers decide where they are going to allocate the funds. So the parks renewal budget has been going up every year for the last 5 years, and then will continue to do so as part of this strategy.
So just again, because what I worry about is, you know, is surprises in the next term of council, and you know, maybe the surprise will be I'm not going to be here anyway, so it won't be up to me. But I do worry, especially about, you know, when we talk about our funding and our needs for parks, for buildings, for our structures and what that could mean. And I just wonder why in the long-range financial plan there's no options given to us in terms of, you know, would you recommend a levy? Would you recommend something in addition to take the financial strategies that just identify money from within our budget? And what would that look like?
Through the mayor, I guess I would say I wouldn't recommend a levy. We've had that in the past, and what it has done is it has created too much pressure on your taxpayers because you have your typical increase for inflation on all parts of the city, and then you have a levy on top of it. It was a very short-lived idea when council introduced it last time. I think we had 1 year where we did it. The next year they substituted it with debt, and the third year they got rid of it altogether. So what I'd like to see happen is a plan that's actually going to get us somewhere. What we've put in front of you, I think, is a reasonable plan. You could accelerate it, but my concern is this, is that you can give us more funds to do things, but there's only a certain amount of capacity within the city to actually get those dollars spent and out the door. So you could double the budget in ISD, but I can tell you they don't have the capacity to spend that in a 1-year time frame. So this plan sees a gradual ramping up of the contribution, and it also allows the departments who spend the money to ramp up their resources to actually achieve that. So this is a very doable plan. We didn't put any options here because this is the best plan that we thought was available to you.
I have just a quick question then for Mr. Gonche. I identified in my community, one of my community centers in the downtown, on one of the floors. There's a sign now that says you can't drink the water, and I'm told that it's because there's lead that was found in the water, and that will be rectified in 2018 if we have the money in the budget. So, you know, when my community sees these things, people come to me and say, what's going on? Why can't this be fixed now? And, you know, when we have this report in front of us, those are the questions that I get. People wonder, is this the outcome of us not keeping up with our asset renewal? And is the fact that we might get it fixed in 2018 a result of us not filling that gap sooner with different options? Just wonder if you can address that.
So, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I don't have the specifics on that case. I can certainly take that offline and certainly also have a discussion with Mr. Wiley because his group would be doing the actual testing and certainly get back to you with a more detailed response.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor El-Shantiri, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Madam Treasurer, I know we are looking at the long-range financial plan, and that what we're recommending, or what this item through recommending, the increase or additional 7.8 million start in 2019. I know that's really a step in the right direction, but my question is, does the 7.8 plus the inflation, will that be the need at the time? Because the reason I'm saying this, because most of facilities, most of bridges, most things built in this city either after the 50s or after the 80s, and it seems they're both coming to the street at the same time. So I'm wondering, are we investing enough in those areas where, because the longer we wait, sometimes it seems the bigger the bill or the wider the repair or the replacement is going to be. And I know we say we review the assets, but really we haven't reviewed everything we have, because I can tell you some of the what you call the local roads in any community has not been review for quite some time, because really those roads mostly built 30 and 40 years ago, and now really so my question to you is, and I know you're going to say, well, it depends on how much council wants to contribute, and I know it goes back to us, but my question to you is that $7.8 million per year starting in 2019, plus the inflation, plus what staff in the asset management report said they're going to find some saving, was that going to be enough?
I can only rely on the numbers that I'm provided with from the engineers. That's the amount that they think we should be investing. And yes, there are peaks and valleys in terms of it, because we had assets, all the assets didn't come on to the city at the same time. There were years, and thinking of the 70s when the city was growing quite quickly, that we took on way more assets than in, say, the 80s. So yes, you'll see variations in the amount that we need, reflecting when those assets actually reach the age that they need to be renewed. But I'm confident in the number that the engineers gave me, that that's what they need to see in terms of investment in the assets. The plan we've put forward to you is, as I've said, it's a longer-term plan. It brings us there over a 10-year period. It's council's determination as to whether you want to accelerate that or not. But I would caution you that, and I know councillors have said this before, a lot of times the work doesn't get done because other priorities come into place. For example, with the stimulus program that we have right now, a lot of the regular work isn't happening because we're focusing on the stimulus projects, the clean water, wastewater, and the public transportation infrastructure fund, because those have hard deadlines on us for us to actually see the work happen so that we can get paid by the federal and provincial government. So even though you were to increase the contribution, there's no guarantee that we'd actually be able to get the work out the door and complete in a timely manner, given other priorities that happen and the fact that the resources aren't really aligned with an increase in the contribution at this point in time. And by that, the resources I'm referring to, the resources that you would have in your engineering branch.
Okay, and I know you're going to tell me this is we're going to review once we start on a long-range financial plan in the future. So since 2012, all the gas tax money been going toward public transit. Is that correct?
It has been since we received the gas tax back in 2003 or 4. Council at that time decided that that's where that gas tax was going to be spent, on transit.
And what's the amount we receive now?
We receive something like $50 million from the federal government and about 25 from the provincial government.
And it's all geared toward public transit?
Yes, it is. It's going to support your two big infrastructure projects, the Confed Line 1 and Confed Line 2.
So when would we start thinking maybe some of that gas tax money should be toward transportation instead of just transit, because obviously some of our road can use some of that as well. So is that a discussion need to take place in the next long-range financial plan?
So we filed the long-range financial plan for transit a few months back when you were looking at stage 2 of light rail, and that plan sees all of the gas tax committed to transit for the foreseeable future. Unless something happens where all of a sudden the projects disappear or the costs change, that plan already saw all of that funding going towards transit.
So one question would remain: should we lobby in the future our governments to support the repair, refix, instead of because most of the stimulus coming for a new project. They always come in for a new project, and we receive funding and we got excited. We're doing a new project, but then our current asset got really back burner. So should the discussion in the future with other level of government, I know maybe that question should be directed to the mayor, not to you. Should we start asking the province and the Fed some consideration for the current, and I'm sure it's not our city alone, because right across the province or the country, I think you hear about those assets.
And to the mayor, because I know he's aware of this, a number of municipalities across this province have actually got together to start discussions with the province about not having sporadic stimulus funds come to us, but give us sustained long-term funding that's predictable, that we can plan for, that we can build into all of our strategies, because you're correct, they tend to prefer the brand new things as opposed to the replacement, but we're at the point, and most municipalities are there now, where it's renewal and replacement that is our #1 priority.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Councillor Shintiri. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have two questions. I think the first is directed to the clerk, and I think I ask this during these discussions most of the time. I just want to ensure that if we're approving this long-range financial plan, that we're not necessarily constraining ourselves with respect to the budgets that we craft in the next term of council, that we still have that flexibility.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And then the second question I have, and I am grateful for councillors who have a longer memory of council policy than I. In the 2012 long-range financial plan, and I will read this out because I think it's important, staff had said $25 million in permanent annual funding was to be secured from senior governments through their infrastructure funding plans. In the absence of such new funding, a dedicated infrastructure tax levy equal to 0.5% increase to the tax levy starting in 2016 would achieve the required funding level by 2022. Staff had also spoken about a more gradual levy. We're not talking about levies anymore. And, you know, a $7 million hit to each of our very low tax increases is a significant chunk that's just going straight to infrastructure maintenance, leaving us very little room out of any future tax increases to pay for all the other costs at the city that are going up. Why in 2012 were staff recommending an infrastructure levy, and why not in 2017, 2018?
In 2012, we were looking at that time, the possibility of having federal and provincial funding coming in on a regular basis. That didn't materialize. You then subsequently had an election and a council that set as a direction a 2% tax target. So automatically the levy discussion was finished, because we accommodated what we needed to, what we had agreed to, through the 2%. But you would set a target that was contrary to what we had recommended in there, so we went with what council had decided. The new council, as they were, the previous one was made by the previous council.
So is it your assumption then that the tax increases of the next council and the council after it and the one after it is going to continue to be 2%? Or, you know, what is your looking at what the politics of it are going to be moving forward? If it was removed for political reasons this term of council, you know, are we assuming the same politics moving forward?
I have no assumptions about what your tax increase will be starting in 2019. What we have done in this long-range financial plan is ensured that whatever you set that target with, we will be increasing the contribution to capital by $7.8 million a year, including plus inflation. So this report just sets out what you want to achieve with respect to capital, ensures that that will happen. Whether you want to do it as a separate levy, whether you want to accelerate this, the next council can decide that, but I have no assumptions about what your tax target will be.
So the recommendation on the part of staff today does not speak to what that future increase may be. In order to accommodate that, you know, $7.8 million, the next council may have to have a tax increase that is over 2%.
The report in front of you puts a plan forward that will see your increase, whatever your tax increase is, we'll see $7.8 million of it going towards the contribution to capital. So it doesn't, the next council could decide they want to increase that by more, but as a minimum, whatever, if you give us no direction with respect to capital funding at all, this is the plan that I will follow.
Okay. I followed the discussion a little bit earlier with Councillor Nussbaum. I just want to make sure that I understand this. I know that if I make small repairs in my home today, it will cost me less than it would cost if I were to have to make major repairs down the road. We're proposing to make smaller investments in repairs today than to do it more quickly. Do we have a sense of how much that is going to cost the future taxpayer of Ottawa? If we were to accelerate repairs today through, for example, the addition of a small infrastructure levy, how much could we potentially save if we were to accomplish the repairs we need to accomplish in 7 years versus 10, or 5 years versus 10?
Mr. Mayor, as indicated before, that's not a number that we have right now. Certainly something that we could come back with, but I think what's important to understand, and that Mrs. Similek has been explaining, is that the plan that we're putting before you is a plan in terms of how we can continue to sustain our assets in a way that we can actually achieve progress. And I think what we've seen over this term of council has been a significant shift in terms of what we were previously seeing in terms of unpredictable funding patterns and funding sources. We've been able to see a very different pattern this term of council, and that we hopefully will continue to see in the future. And part of that is attributed to the asset management strategy and the long-range financial strategy that was put forward in terms of how do we get to a path of stability and predictability. And that's going to allow us to allocate the investments to minimize basically those higher cost investments in terms of making sure that we do replace the shingles, that we do the resurfacing, instead of having to rebuild part of the roof or having to rebuild part of the road. So that is built into the plan. That is the element that we're trying to manage. We talked about infrastructure that was built in the 50s to 80s. That is the wave that we are trying to manage. In every cycle where we update this information, you will have updated information in terms of, okay, where do we stand in terms of condition. The information that we provide is really based on condition information. It's not based on strict percentages based on the assets that we have. It's based on the condition of our assets. So as we continue to maintain those inspection data that we have, we continue to have updated condition information. We're going to be able to continue to provide updated information every time we refresh our asset management and also our financial planning cycles.
If I can make it a little bit more specific, just in terms of being able to communicate with the residents of our ward, there are any number, and we had a long discussion at FEDCO, and I'm not going to revisit that discussion today, but if we adopt this long-range financial plan, and there are any number of roads in the ward that have been compromised by frequent road cuts that are well past the point where they're in a state of repair that most residents would consider acceptable. We also know that in the next 5 to 7 years those roads are not set for resurfacings or for rebuilds. Can I take the approval of this long-range financial plan back to residents and say this will accelerate the repairs that we need on the roads in our ward, or is it still very uncertain as to whether or not we're going to get those in the next 5 to 7 years? If they're not in the plan today, in other words, does accepting this plan for our long-range finances, does it accelerate that, or are we still uncertain as to when those assets are going to be repaired?
Mr. Mayor, it definitely accelerates, and the reason why we're identifying that we need to be spending more dollars is a recognition that we need to increase investment levels that we are currently doing. So the sheer fact that you're approving a report and a plan that shows an increase in investments certainly provides recognition to that fact. What we've also, and this is basically going back to the discussion that we had at FEDCO, is right now the focus is on higher risk assets. So arterial roads, major collector roads, because they do carry higher volumes of traffic, they do have typically higher speeds, which means that lower risk roads such as community type of streets are not getting a higher level of attention. But as we progress through our plan, we will be able to start rediverting some of those dollars to more of the local streets. But first, we need to make sure that we're able to address those higher risk roads, and then over time we will be able to start directing more funds to local. Can we say for certainty right now, in 6, 7, 8 years from now, specifically which local streets will be done? No, that's not a level of detail that we can get into at this point. What we can say is that for that foreseeable future, we will continue to focus on those priority roads. But as we refresh the cycles, and as we've been meeting with the councillors to go over the capital plan in terms of what's in the future, we'll be able to start providing insight in terms of when we're going to be able to get into some of those more local streets.
With the short time I have remaining, I would just encourage you to consider some of those residential streets to be very high risk. We're having a number of conversations right now with very low volume streets in the ward that, because they're low volume, are frequently used by cyclists. And there's one street that is not in our plan for a rebuild anytime soon, or even a resurfacing, where a neighbor has been watching multiple incidents of cyclists who are hitting dips and potholes and nearly getting very seriously hurt. A poor state of road is one risk to cars. It's a very different order of risk to cyclists who use those because they are low volume. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. On the report, carried. Dissent by Councillor Shirelli. He wants to increase taxes more. Okay, thank you. Note it. Next is item 17, River Road speed reduction from Lowen Drive to 110 meters south of Tuesley Drive. Councillor Moffat, I believe, held this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, really, this just goes back to Transportation Committee. I didn't get a chance at the time. We were kind of going through things quickly. We had 4 items, 4 councillors' items on the agenda, and the 3 subsequent ones to this one were held. And the councillors who put them forward had to explain their rationale behind it. We carried this one quickly, yet the other 3 had to be held, and rationale given as to why they were going against staff warrants. Of course, this one doesn't meet warrants either. I think the compliance rate for the speed limit, the current speed limit today in that zone, is between 0 and 4% compliance on that stretch of roadway. Yet this report seeks to lower the speed limit from 70 to 60. With the other 3 reports, Councillor Manette, Councillor Blais, and Councillor Brockington, I think we all agree that no one knows our wards better than ourselves in our communities that we work with. So to give some incredible high level of scrutiny to decisions that we're making on residential streets in our wards, again, we don't know it like the councillor does. But given that we got the scrutiny given to 3 reports, and each councillor worked on defending those reports and the effort that they put into them, I think it's only fair that we hear the rationale behind this report, which also goes against staff recommendations. So if I could just get that here. I couldn't do it at committee because after we carry it, we can't, there's no procedure to reconsider at committee. So this was the best option here.
Councillor Deans.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to answer Councillor Moffat's question. Councillor Kakish and I put this report forward to attempt to address the community's ongoing concern with speeding along River Road. Since the opening of the Vimy Memorial Bridge, my office has received an influx of emails and calls from residents along River Road who have noticed not only an increase in traffic volume, but also in the speed of vehicles coming into their neighborhoods. And let me just say that this council agreed to spend a lot of money widening Line Bank Road to make it the arterial that would carry large volumes of traffic. But what happened, traffic is like water, it follows a course of least resistance, and what has happened is because it's slightly shorter to take the scenic route in our visual plan, which is known as River Road, or the scenic route in the NCC's plan, they've been taking that and speeding and really having a very adverse impact on the quality of life of the people, both Councillor Kakish's ward and my ward, that live along that stretch of road. And so Councillor Kakish and I have held a public meeting and have met regularly with community groups, and throughout all of our discussions, reducing the speed along River Road has been their #1 objective. And while I support the initiative to reduce the speed on River Road, I'm actually concerned that this report doesn't go far enough, because it actually goes 60, 80, 60. And I think if it had maybe gone 60, 70, 60, that would have been even better. But Councillor Kakish and I did not agree on that particular item, so we left it this way. But I think for the residents that have been severely impacted by the speed of traffic on that particular stretch of road, they would appreciate Council's support for this initiative. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I think just the concern, and this is just to go back to something that we dealt with at Agricultural Affairs Committee with Councillor DeRuse, and Councillor DeRuse knows my thoughts on this too, is that when you have these types of things, especially when the compliance rate is so low currently, that you really need community buy-in as well. So I hope that you're both working with your community associations on these things to make sure that they're also complying, because clearly we're not seeing compliance today on River Road. And I think it'd be misleading to suggest to these residents that they are going to see a drastic reduction in speed with this change, which can be concerning, which I think is why we have the 85th percentile rule on speed limits reductions, or on speed limits designations. Nevertheless, I know in those cases, like with Councillor DeRuse, there was a big community push to make a change for something, but also that they're going to be part of the solution. They're going to be helping with the buy-in for that. And I think you need that from your associations in that area in order to achieve compliance. Otherwise, it's just going to reduce compliance even more. They're going to keep on driving the same speed because River Road is designed to a certain design speed, not to a 60-kilometer-hour speed. So anyways, those are just my concerns. I think it's important that you try to work with your community, and I think too it's a good opportunity to use some of the traffic calming budget that we have in order to address those things too. When you change the speed limit, in order to achieve compliance, you might want to look at investing some funds in some boards or some other infrastructure that'll help actually achieve the speed limit rather than just changing some signs.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I did send this item at committee because River Road is, I know it's a nice road and people use it for scenic road, and I Councillor Deans really said that earlier. And every time if we reduce the speed on River Road, I don't think we're really addressing the issue of speeder. Actually, if you reduce the speed, especially on River Road, you're going to increase the people cross over between lanes. It's a very wide road, and last year we always heard complaint about the road are not paved. So we paved the road last year, and of course every time you pave a road, you increase the speed. So every time we pave a nice road from shoulder to shoulder, and we're going to increase the speed, decrease the speed, we're really increasing the risk of accident on that road. And River Road's seen lots of tragic accident, and not small accident, major accident, because it's a major route. People from Kempville, people from North Gore, Manatic, and of course Osgood, my area, we all travel on that road. And by reducing it from 70 to 60, really you're not eliminating and you're not addressing the issue. We have traffic calming measure. The issue here, it needs to be more monitored, more policing maybe on it by using a speed board on them. We use them in our community. But the answer for River Road, if you look at inconsistent speed on it from River Road all the way down to Domney and Boundary, it goes from 60, 70, 80. It's so confusing and so inconsistent. So really, I ask staff to look at, review the whole road, River Road, and address the issue on it, and either make it all 60 or 70 or 80, but make up your mind. Stop reducing speed at specific community. I cannot support that because I have similar situation south end of bridge. So not because only you open the bridge, you really create a problem. The problem is we paved the road, it's looking very nice now, and we widen it, and it look appealing for people driving on it 80 and 100. And now you want to let people driving on 60, you're actually increasing the risk. So for that, I don't think it's a wise idea to reduce the speed, and I think if we really need to reduce it, we need to look at it the River Road, all of it, from beginning to end. Thank you.
Councillor DeRoche, did you want staff to address that, or staff?
It's not working. Oh, here we go. Through you, Acting Mayor. Yeah, so we did do a review of the whole corridor from the boundary of the City of Ottawa up to Linebank Riverside, and the appropriate speed based on our speeds only policy is 80 kilometers an hour. With that being said, we don't go back and change speed limits that have been set by other councils at the time, because the speed limits were set 20, 25, 30 years ago. So unless there's a desire to come forward with an appropriate speed limit for the whole section, we're just going to leave the speeds as they are. In this case, there's a desire to reduce those speeds. We don't expect the speeds to be reduced unless we see increased police enforcement. And that's sort of reflected in our comments in the report.
Councillor DeRose?
So when you address the issue on the south end and the north end, did you notice the difference between the percentage of the speeder in both sides? Because I asked you directly to review the whole River Road from Leitrim all the way down to Balmead. So can you tell me in specific, where did you find an issue to reduce the speed, or where do you support or where you don't support it?
What we found when we did our review is that the speeds were in the 80 to 85 kilometers an hour. We did see some speed reductions in areas where there was a bit more houses next to this, or by the park down near the Earl Armstrong or the Vimy Bridge. But for the most part, the speeds were in the 80 to 85 kilometer hour range, and that hence the recommendation that we provided back was that the road should be 80 kilometers an hour if we were to move forward with changing it.
So as you see, Mr. Mayor, that the speed on River Road really, if you reduce it, is not really going to help. Actually, the city will be taking more liability, and I don't think this is fair for our residents that they travel and they use this as a commute. This is not an inside street in subdivisions. Really, that road you cannot drive at 60. It's unrealistic. So we really be creating more issue if we really reduce the speed. And what's going to bring on us at the south end, now we're going to be under pressure from our resident to reduce the speed in every pocket area we have. And if you drive River Road, every half a kilometer there is pocket of resident, and now we cannot be consistent. So I encourage my city councilor colleague not to really support that. This is not a really good idea.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kakis?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I just want to pick up on a few points that my colleague brought up, and specifically on the buy-in, and that I just want to be crystal clear on this, because we've been working for the past 2 years with the local community association, the Honey Gables Community Association in Gloucester Glen, and with Phil's team to implement a whole bunch of traffic calming measures. So we're not just doing this as the first and last measure, and so Phil can speak to some of those if you want specifics, but we've done a bunch of different measures in collaboration with the local community associations, both in my area and in Councillor Dean's area as well. So including the median, where the paint lines are wider so that there's narrowing of the roads, and so that we bring down the speeds automatically. In fact, if you look at the numbers, we've had a bit of success with that, because you can see right after the repaving, the numbers typically go up, and they haven't really gone up. So there's been some successful attempts. This is not popular everywhere. We've brought down the left turning from the bridge in the peak hours in the morning, so that people are encouraged to use Earl Armstrong on Linebank, which is what they're meant to accommodate in terms of volume and speed. So we've done a bunch of measures. This is not the first thing that we've done, and we've brought it here because a lot of the residents that are in Honey Gables front onto River Road, and this is a fairly small stretch of road that we're bringing down, and you can read the report where Diane takes a poke at me about this, but I don't agree about the part that's further north where it's 80, because there are no residential units there. But on the stretch that I'm looking at, specifically the residents do, front onto River Road, and a lot of them have a difficult time getting out of their driveways with increased volumes of traffic. And Councillor Derouz is talking about the stretch south. I mean, there's a reason. I know it's not ideal to have 3 different speeds along, or 4, whatever, that you have along River Road, but River Road is a long road, and the volumes that you see in south of the bridge are not the same as you see north of the bridge since we've opened it, because most people are going northbound. So the issues in Councillor Derouz's ward are different than the ones that are in my area and Councillor Dean's. So I just wanted to clarify those points for those who are not aware of or is familiar with River Road, as well as the dynamics in terms of the traffic impacts that have changed. And I want to assure everyone that we do have buy-in. In fact, the Community Association are supportive of these recommendations, and I know it's being held for the reasons that Councillor Moffat pointed out, not necessarily for the report itself. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone is clear on, we have been working closely with the local community associations before bringing this forward as a final resort.
Okay, Councillor Manette on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess when it comes to this issue, I do understand what Councillor DeRosa is saying, is we had the same issue on St. Joseph Boulevard where the traffic speed was changing every block or half a block. And it was creating a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration for the residents. However, I guess in this instance, it has been identified that the public consultation was done, and I always respect the wishes of the ward councillors, because they're the ones that deal with the residents and are aware of the issue. So in most cases, I would have dissented on this one because I agree with Councillor DeRouz, but in this case, because of the public consultation and the support of the community, I will support it.
So we still have a number of items in camera to deal with. Is it necessary to continue this debate on basically 10 kilometers an hour? Councillor Shirley, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to congratulate Councillor DeRouz and Kakish on reducing the speed of council.
So you had nothing to add. Thank you. All right, so on the motion, carried. Dissent by Councillor DeRouz. Okay. Next item held, request to extend hours for 283 Elgin Street and for all right-of-ways for patios for Canada Day 2017. Councillor Leeper held this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no issue with the motion. The wording of the motion is such that it requires consultation with the local ward councillor. I'm happy to support this one if I have a commitment from staff that if it were proposed for Kitchissippi ward or any other ward, that the ward councillor will actually have a final say over it.
Mr. Mayor, I think that is the intent of the motion as passed by committee, that local councillors do get consulted through the process.
Consulted, or if something were proposed, for example, in my ward, and I objected, would you abide by that objection?
I think it's been our practice in other matters of delegated authority where a councillor does not support it, we would not issue it.
Do I have that commitment from you today?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, on the report, carried. The next item is the bulk consent agenda. Item number L, capital adjustment. Councillor Hubley had a specific issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A short motion. Be it resolved that project 906279 be removed from page 9 of the capital projects recommended for closure report, listed as item L on the bulk consent agenda. The reason is the project's not done yet, so it was premature.
Okay, on the motion, carried.
Thank you.
In addition to considering the in-camera item listed on the agenda, Council will also be asked to waive the rules of procedure to consider another in-camera matter pertaining to exemptions to the bilingualism policy. Councillor Kadri, seconded by Councillor Hubley, please introduce the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And the motion is that be it resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended to receive and consider the tentative agreements reached for the renewal of the collective agreements with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Local 503, Part-Time Recreation and Culture, QP 503, and with QP Local 503, Summer Aquatics, and to permit the Deputy City Solicitor and staff to brief Council on same. And be it further resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended, receive and consider requests for exemptions pursuant to the bilingualism policy, and be it further resolved that Council resolve in camera pursuant to Procedure Bylaw 2016-377 as follows. A, pursuant to subsection 13(1)D, labor relations or employee negotiations, and subsection 13(1)F, the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose, with respect to the tentative agreement reached for the renewal of the collective agreements with QP Local 503, Part-Time Recreation Culture, and QP Local 503, Summer Aquatics, and B, pursuant to subsection 13(1)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including staff, and 13(1)D, labor relations or employee negotiation with respect to the exemption request pursuant to the bilingualism policy.
Okay, so that is our motion carried. So we'll take a 5-minute recess before moving in camera. I'd ask the room be cleared and that staff who do not need to be present, please leave the room as well. And please remember to bring all your belongings. I'll be available to the media in Jean Piggott Hall for that 5-minute period. Thank you.